Hi, it's Kevin May in the PhocusWire studio. Delighted to be joined by Jeff Pan, CEO of Flymya or Flymya?
Flymya. It's a confusing. Yeah. You know
Okay.
what? We didn't do focus group testing when we did the name.
Okay, thanks ever so much for joining us. You've just come off stage. Focused on that particular market, Myanmar. How hard has that been to do?
I think I've gained 15, 20 pounds in the past year since I started. It's you deal with a lot of things that you wouldn't normally have to deal with in a typical market. So.
For example?
How long does it take for you to transfer money between two different bank accounts?
Depending on the Wi-Fi connection in here.
Yeah. So you can't do that in Myanmar.
Yeah.
So we have like an entire team, and they just physically carry bags of cash from one bank.
Yes, I mean, we did an article with you a couple of months ago, and there was a great picture of all these rows of your staff counting money and putting it into bags.
So we have a lot of like human APIs. So we have human APIs to move money. So a lot of the airlines don't have full APIs, so we actually have to have like somebody doing this for the airline fares on the website 24 hours a day. So we have human APIs for that.
Okay.
So
has that been the biggest challenge that you've had in your, the years that you've been operating there?
I mean, at the end of the day, it works. All the emerging market OTAs, Make My Trip, C-Trip, they went through the same phase as well. So I don't complain about it. I think where it becomes a little bit of an issue is that it detracts you from doing the real tech, right? So you have to kind of go through this as part of your first mover advantage.
Okay. And what other kind of restrictions or challenges did you have apart from the payment thing? Was there any kind of problems around getting inventory and the technical? You said you wanted to focus on the tech bits, but were there any problems with the tech bits that you faced just because of the nature of where you're operating?
Not so much tech. I think that the tech, wherever you go, it's pretty standardized. Like the information flows freely. I think the biggest difficulty was recruitment. I spent about 70% of my time on people, and remember that people that grew up in Myanmar, they didn't have internet as early as 5 years ago, right? So most of my developers and engineers grew up without the internet. And so a lot of times I have to fill some gaps in the tech team by heavy recruiting. So I go to Singapore and Bangkok a lot and just go and just try and recruit people to come to Myanmar. It's a really tough sell.
Yeah.
It's like trying to date if you live at home with your mother. Right? Okay. So you kind of have to make them fall in love with you first, and then you drop the bomb after that.
Okay. Oh, and by the way.
Right.
Okay. So have you had, it's an interesting point, I've not considered that. So have you had people say, sorry, I'm not going to do that because you've now told me that you live at home with your mother and you're based in Myanmar? You have to qualify out.
There's a lot of people out there that actually like that kind of thing, right? So kind of the same thing. We look for the black sheep. I'm a bit of a weirdo, right? And we look for other weirdos that kind of enjoy that challenge.
Okay. So in terms of, you said the connections are fairly standardized. So the inventory from hotels and flights, is those the two that you do at the moment, or is it?
95% of our business right now is domestic flights.
Domestic flights.
Really small niche, yeah.
So what's the level of outbound travel outside of the domestic market currently?
So not too much. What's really interesting, if you look at all the OTAs in Southeast Asia that have really succeeded, from Make My Trip to Traveloka to C-Trip, almost all of their sales come from domestic travelers on domestic travel. So we've heavily focused on that. So within Myanmar, about 85% of our business comes from Myanmar citizens. Okay. So we try and zig where others zag. So we would never try and go after you visiting Myanmar because you're going to go on Google Flights, book with a credit card, whereas people in Myanmar have a very different behavior.
Is it leisure travelers, or are you finding the business community?
It's about 50-50 business and leisure. Okay. But we haven't really...
That's pretty unusual for an OTA, right?
Yeah. I mean, we haven't really penetrated the corporate travel. So actually, if you think about our niche, it's even smaller. It's domestic leisure travelers, domestic travel.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how have you found your users? Is it through whatever search engine that they're using? Is it above the line advertising? I mean, how have you done that?
Oh, it's so hard to do customer acquisition from the B2C side. So hard. So many moving parts that you have to figure out.
Okay.
We try and focus on B2B partnerships. So we work with a lot of the local banks. There's a lot of super apps that are unique to Southeast Asia.
Okay.
Right. So there's a lot of super apps that are massive that you've probably never heard of. We work a lot with hotels that use our software. We work a lot with airlines as well. Anything we can do to get in the middle of the transaction.
Okay, and how do you grow it? I mean, presumably, I'm making the assumption here, sorry, that you are going to focus particularly on that market. Growth is going to come just through sheer more people flying and traveling domestically, or is there an anticipated big level of growth outbound?
So I've only been there for about a year, and it took about 3 quarters to build the team, right? And during that time, we made the very, very difficult, painful decision to essentially just build a well-functioning restaurant with only one thing on the menu.
Right.
We want to just keep very focused. It's a lot of moving parts. And I think it's gotten to the point now where we can start putting in more products, and hopefully by the end of the year, we should start expanding into other countries.
Okay.
So you can imagine there's a lot of parallels in untouched markets like Bangladesh, Cambodia, Laos. Obviously,
so it's those markets rather than, okay, let's try Singapore now, or let's try Thailand.
I won't be able to compete on Singapore or Traveloka, but I think there's enough of a commercial size on all the untouched Southeast Asia.
Okay. So we first met a couple of years ago. You were at Booking.com then. Can you identify perhaps what's the single thing you learned at Booking.com that you are applying to the new job?
Can I be honest with you?
Hopefully.
The cafeteria. The employee cafeteria, honestly, it's the best investment that you can make as an employer for return for productivity boost.
Okay.
Okay. Other than that, joking aside, data science. I think what I was so enamored with Booking's culture is that I think my first 3 months there, I spent half of it in a classroom just learning data science.
Okay.
And we've instilled that in our team. And it's quite interesting. I teach the same data science curriculum that I was taught at Booking. And I see I see a 60, they're able to absorb about 60% of it pretty quickly. So,
and some might say, because Booking.com is held up as this great company to work for, it's a global power player, that to give all that up, you were based in Amsterdam, I think, at the time, weren't you? And to give all that up and go and do a startup in Myanmar where you're stuffing envelopes with cash. Why? What attracted you to go and make such a fundamental leap in what you're doing?
Because being an entrepreneur is a little bit like herpes. That itch it'll never go away.
Right.
And it was a phenomenal experience. I learned, it was an MBA experience for me. But at the end of the day, everybody here, most of the people here have never worked for anybody else.
Right.
So you always get that itch. You always get the dreams. And I think during Booking.com, coming to Phocuswright and seeing all the startups, and they're always so happy.
Okay.
Right? They're just always so optimistic.
Yeah, blinding levels of optimism.
Right.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Right. Thank you.
Cheers.